When you need someone to talk to and you don't know what to do, call us 4400. When you're feeling all alone and they turn their back on you, call us 4400. Call us 4400. Call us 4400. Call us. All right. Good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the Kind Counseling Podcast, where healing begins.
What's up?
Woo! Welcome, everybody. Welcome.
Right.
Today, our guest is Joy Roll Bobian. And just a little bit about Joy before we get started. Joy was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. She currently resides on Staten Island with her husband and son. She works at SICIL, we're going to find out what that means later, doing community outreach and providing social services for people with mental health issues and disabilities. She is also an evangelist at Rhema House of Prayer and Deliverance. Her ministries include evangelistic outreach and working with young people who need love and spiritual direction. She also works in the music ministry as a choir directress and a praise and worship leader. Yeah, girl after my own heart. Her passion is spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ and helping people in need. Let's all welcome Joy. Welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Welcome, Joy. It's such a pleasure to have you with us today. Now, we go back a little bit. We go back. It's so good to have you with us
glad
today.
To be here.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
Well, Joy, tell us a little bit about what you're doing now before we jump into the deeper questions and all
Okay.
that kind of stuff. Just tell us a little bit about what you're doing.
Okay, in a whole, where I work is actually an agency that provides services for people who have mental health issues and also physical disabilities. So primarily, we want to help them to live in the community independently. And not only that, empower them to be able to advocate for their benefits and their services.
Okay.
So we're kind of like a voice, that reaches out and helps.
Okay.
The agency's been around for, I believe, over 20 years.
Okay.
It was actually founded with people who have disabilities and created
wow.
legislative changes for them.
Okay.
So I really like that atmosphere. I like the environment. It's a small team, very welcoming. And since I've been there, I've just had tremendous success. Making partnerships and collaborating and just bringing our services out into the neighborhood. So
Awesome. So what does SICIL stand for?
it stands for Staten Island Center for Independent Living. We actually provide on-site counseling as well.
Okay.
We have a social worker there. We have peer groups, women's groups. We have men's groups. We also have cooking classes for children with disabilities. They come from different high schools on Staten Island. We have an after-school cooking program as well.
Oh, nice.
And we run pretty much based on the needs as well that they need. So we'll bring in workshops and housing. We also help assist with that.
Okay.
And overall, just trying to help them with whatever benefits that they might need.
Okay.
So, yeah, that pretty much is what we do there at our site. So we're also located in the 5 boroughs too.
Okay.
So we
really?
have
Okay.
a center in all 5 boroughs.
It kind of sounds a little bit like YAI. I don't know if you're familiar with YAI.
What?
It's I don't know what the acronym stands for, but I know
Young Adult Institute.
Young Adult Institute,
Uh-huh.
but it also assists with, I don't know if they do the full scope of what you're doing,
Okay.
but I know they do work with people that are somehow, either impaired in some kind of way.
Yeah.
So that's what it sort of sounds like. So now, are these people living in the community, or are they, in a some kind of a shelter or something? How does that work?
Yeah, it depends. We do deal with people in all walks of life. So I could get a referral from someone in the shelter system,
Okay.
someone facing eviction. I could deal with someone in supportive housing.
Okay.
Finding people housing through supportive housing. It really doesn't matter. I'm glad that our criteria is so broad because it helps us to be able to help anyone. So we don't provide services for housing if someone is, let's say, in a nursing home. We do partnership with another program because there are a lot of people that are in nursing homes that need extensive services and are capable of living independently.
Yeah.
So we want to be that referral place, especially for mental health counseling and for services to make sure. So
Awesome.
just having you guys here kind of counseling, we
Yeah.
do have people that, are in other boroughs, are willing to travel
Right.
to seek out, you know, the
Yeah.
counseling and services that they need. So,
Yeah. And we certainly could use you as well as a referral source.
Send them over.
Yeah.
Send them over.
Yeah.
Send them over.
That's it. It takes, a lot of hands to really address the mental health
Definitely.
situation.
Definitely. So many people are undiagnosed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Especially in the Black community.
Definitely,
Yeah.
100%. I see it often, and we want to try to help bridge that gap between mental health services and making sure that they have help. Because there's so many things that require extensive counseling, ongoing. I always encourage people who come in for an intake to seek out at least a social worker. But then that's still limited, right? Because a lot of people, are on medications, are not taking their medications, and have stopped going to counselors. So it's just such a bridge, and it's sometimes it could be very disheartening to see that. But again, still trying to advocate and let them know who's out there and available
For them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's important because the stigma is lifting, but it's still there a little bit. A lot of people don't want to go.
They
They're
don't
kind of
wanna
doing a
go.
double Dutch thing. Like,
Yeah.
should I?
go?
Yeah. So it's necessary. Those services are very necessary.
Yes. That's kind of my job and my personal part. I am 100% committed to ministry. I am always excited about sharing my faith. Always. That's something that is in my heart. Even, my motivation for being where I am is the love of God. That's why I'm there. So in my personal life, I evangelize, share the gospel. I help serve. I'm a servant in my church. Serving at home, of course, but there, working with the young people, working with the children. I love the youth department. I'm always with them. And, helping to, teach and encourage young singers and, musicians and stuff. That's something dear to my heart, too. Yeah.
And it's important, too, because at the end of the day, when we get our minds right, we still need God to keep it.
You still need
sanity.
It must
Because
go.
some of these situations
You
can
need
make
a
you
little
go
more.
right over the edge.
You need some more. You need some more.
Yeah.
So many of them, they're missing hope.
Yeah,
They are missing hope. That's
yeah.
really what's missing.
Yeah.
They've lost faith in people. So when you lose faith in people, it's very difficult for you to have faith in God. So I try to make sure that I say what I say, I mean what I say, and do what I do. I want to make sure that I don't fall short if I can. I want to be up front with them, and I want them to be in the care of people who care about them. That's important to me.
Yeah, it is for young people.
Yeah.
Yes, it's very important.
So Joy, so part of why we asked you to come today is along with some of what you're doing right now. Just in terms, like you said, you're working with young people, you're helping to restore them, give them hope, and I'm wondering how much of that comes from just what your teenage years were.
My past.
Yeah.
So for me, I grew up in a one-parent home, and from just my entire remembrance of it, I grew up with a parent who was addicted to heroin, and growing up in that kind of atmosphere it's something that you would have to kind of have walked through to know what that is. Being familiar with not having first two parents, but then having one parent that is, addicted to heroin, and then dealing with not having hope, not having stability, not having anyone to hear your story or be there for you. I was a latchkey kid at 9. So, I was letting myself in from school. My instructions were to, put jet food in the microwave and do your homework. And so I kind of grew up in that environment. My mom was a very strong woman. Okay. She worked, and now that I'm older, I realize that she did the best that she could do.
That's right.
After I sort through all of the anger and and that's something that I identify with young people on both sides, because I know how they feel. Right. And I also know that the parents have a story. Yeah. And a lot of times it's hard for the parents to get that story over. Yeah. So for me, it's always been this connection with them, because I know both sides. Okay. So I grew up in a really rough environment. I grew up in a lot of lack and neglect. And my mom is amazing, a woman who gave her life to Christ, and God turned that around for her and restored us, and she's side by side with me in ministry today. So it's a good thing. That's great. But a lot of it does come from growing up in Brooklyn and dealing with the violence and the drugs. I started very young, smoking and drinking, about 12 years old. Okay. A truant, by the time I was in junior high. Dropped out of high school, and just running the streets, fighting, and anything you could think of, Wow. That was my story before. So, again, I don't think there's a young person that I've ever met that I cannot identify with.
Yes. Wow. Yes.
Just from home. I don't care what the story is. Right. I don't care what the anger is. I don't care what it is. I've been here already. So.
Right. So when did you realize that your mom had a problem? When did you kind of, because you said you were young.
Yeah.
So when did you realize that?
I think what a lot of young people do, and I don't know if I don't speak for everyone, but you begin to compare your parents to others. That's the first sign of, okay, something's wrong. Because, Sally's mom always comes home. Sally's mom is at the dance recital, and then you notice the friendships. You notice the circle, that your parents are around. You can see that even based off of TV, young people we're very impressioned by what we watch. Yeah. I'm watching the Cosby Show. Right. This don't like my mother don't look like Claire. It's a little bit of different stuff. But that's what we looking at. Okay, something's wrong, And then you begin to you just have a need that you realize is not being met. I need someone here for me. There's things I don't understand. There's decisions I need to make, and my mom's attention was someplace else. You start to see them not home as much. The distance, the coldness, lack in the house. Things go lacking because there's a drug involved. I mean, I didn't know the core of where that came from my mom. So I had a lot of anger, because I felt like, I don't care what happened to you. This is not something that you should be doing, because I'm suffering because of that. So those are the signs of it just lacking, needing.
So could you maybe tell us what a day was like for you, like just one day during that period, like when you got up in the morning? Was she available to? No.
My mom worked a lot. My mother was a functional addict. So let me make that clear so people will know. My mother was a functional addict. She worked and she dressed well, and she's a beautiful woman. Wow. So at first, at glance, you would never know that my mom, was struggling with substance abuse at that time. So for me, a day, I was just used to my mother always working, never being around. So my days were very empty, and that's how I ended up being very dependent on my friends. And you always meet that one friend that introduce you to everything. That's one friend that just, hey, you know, and it was important for me to have some sort of need that was met, that emotional need, that attachment, that validation, that connection. I got that from them at that time. So I was really, my day was just caught up in let's have fun.
Okay.
Anything that would help me not to think about what was really missing at home, I just kind of filled that up. So my day-to-day was just trying to ignore the fact that no one's here. You know, trying to figure out how I could fill up the empty spaces with, I guess, what they young people call fun. Stuff to do. Because you know, when you don't have anything to do, you find something to do.
Yeah.
So that was pretty much my day. My mom was robotically working to, you know, support her habits. So, you know, to take care of me up too, you know, but she worked clockwork. So she was never really available when I got up for school in the morning. I was on my own. Now, how many gonna go to school and ain't nobody telling them to go? Well, I'm making excuses now.
So I mean, it's I mean, did people around you notice, like your friends notice, or like people in the neighborhood?
Any adults?
Everyone knows. Everyone knew. This is really hard to hide. You know, the part of that began to be more, you know, visible to everyone in the neighborhood. You began to know, and there were certain places where people bought drugs from, and when you saw people going down that block, you kind of figured out that's what it was. I don't know if anyone directly, you know, dealt with my mom or said something to her. My mother's very independent, you know, and I don't want to make this like my mother was just this horrible thing, you know, but just that was just her struggle at that time. She shares her story, you know, she's, you know, free from that now. But at the time, I'm not sure if anyone directly went for intervention. I do remember older people, which is also something that I think I've inherited. There were older people along the way, whether it was a principal in school or a counselor somewhere or just a random neighbor or someone that will always invite me to church, or offer to buy me a dress, or want to take me out with their children. So there were eyes, and I'm like that now too. You know, I've passed by situations that were really overwhelming for a child, and I've had to take the parent's hand and say, let me take them to the park for a minute. So it's funny how
exactly.
I have an eye for it now because I was in it.
The sensitivity to
definitely.
You know, and thank God for those random adults, because that was, even in that was God
definitely
providing for you during that season.
Definitely,
you weren't left totally alone and by yourself. So that's amazing. That's amazing.
Definitely.
Awesome.
So I mean, I guess just like in terms of like your teenage years, like you know, because obviously you're being pulled in a lot of different directions as a teenager. So how did you deal with the pain of that situation? Just like you said, you had certain needs and they weren't being met. Like how did you cope with that?
Drugs and alcohol, party, the street, guys. You know, hanging out. For me, being outside was like necessary. Anything but being home. Anything but being home. I didn't want to be in that atmosphere. I already knew now my mom was, you know, out there. You know, she started to decline in her appearance. You know, it wasn't this well-kept woman anymore that's secretly getting high. Now you start to see the physical. It just was obvious. Everyone in the neighborhood knew, and I just was so upset at my living situation. I didn't want to go home. So for me, it was, I'm going in the street all day, all night long. I'm running the streets. I'm going from corner to corner. Where's the next fun? You know, where's the next group? Whose house can I go hang out at? You know, what mall can I be in? What restaurant could we sit in? Like anything but going home. So from drinking, I started smoking and drinking very early. Smoking and drinking was just a way to camouflage it. It was fun. I'm laughing. You know, and then after a while you begin to see that does not help. you are left with that empty quietness, and your problems are not gone.
Right.
And when everyone goes home,
right.
You are the last person to go in. I was the last person to go in the house type of person. You're still left with those problems. So my teenage years was a lot of anger for me, a lot of fighting, trying to get initiated into gangs, and just very angry and very promiscuous, very wild, wanting attention from guys. Let me doll myself up, let me be the one that all the guys will be looking at, and all those different things. I'm sure a lot of young people do today still. So that was pretty much my teens. Very, 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 very angry. Very angry.
From what age to what age was
the anger?
Yeah, just that whole
scene.
Yeah,
started probably about, I would say 13 to about 19. 13, 14. I would say around 14, I was like my 7th grade year, and I really, really I was in a gifted school like my whole life. Always in gifted schools. Always having teachers, there's so much more for you. Throwing chairs, just acting crazy, and I think that was rough for me transitioning from 7th grade, 8th grade to get ready for high school, because I didn't know who I was, and I didn't know how to be like a high school student. I didn't understand I didn't think I could do that. So for me, that was where I really started getting angry. I just think I wanted everyone to know what was happening at home. And I felt
help.
like to help. Telling do something. Telling I felt was like betraying my mom, which a lot of young people feel. Because you get into the principal's office and you've been missing school for 32 days. And then your parent is giving all these excuses except for the real reason why I'm acting like this. So I have to sit there and accept that I'm acting out because I'm just a kid that's out of control, when really deep down inside, it's a lot of issues at home that I can't tell you about. So for me, again, that's another thing with me and young people. I understand the need to be able to be honest. And it's hard for them because you don't want repercussions to come back from you talking about your parents. Don't you dare talk about me. How dare you? I feed you, I clothe you. You have no right to say that this hurts you or you don't like this situation. So I would say the anger really increased. 14, 17, I was out of control. Most of that time period, 17, 18, is kind of like almost black to me because I was just that self-medicated and
you had to carry all of that by yourself. Was your dad in the picture at all?
My father was never present. That was some situations that happened between him and my mom before I came. So that was just non-existent to me. And when you have, as a young person who has a single parent home, especially when it's a woman, you're always fearful that a man is going to hurt your mother. You're always afraid that he might try to hit her, or he may, thieves breaking in. It's a feeling of not being protected. And I noticed that again. And when I deal with smaller children, sometimes I'll see them react when their parent leaves, screaming and crying. And sometimes people will say, oh, they're so spoiled. No. Something is making them feel like they won't see their mother again. Why do they feel like so threatened, So for me, like I said, not having my father around, there was no image of a man. The only image that I had was whatever man my mother may have been dating. And those weren't always the best choices. So, yeah.
So Joy, at what point would you say things started to shift or turn around? Like, was there like a person or a program or a situation, like something happened?
Let's talk about it. I like the change part. I took y'all down and I'm sharing it. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm sharing it because so many people have experienced it and haven't made it. So from all of that, I ended up, figuring out, okay, you're 19, you're 20, you got to make some changes now. And this is another thing where young people get upset about, because a lot of times when they don't succeed, and now you're 18 and 19, you can no longer say mommy and daddy.
Right.
You are left.
Right.
You are left to be a productive adult regardless of what your past is. You can't use that as an excuse anymore. And my mom had actually gotten saved.
Okay.
My mother reached rock bottom and ended up going into a detox program. And she was an inpatient, and she just left. She was missing for 3 days. I didn't even know where she was. And that was her call. God called my mom. She got on her knees where she was, and she said, I can't take it. That's it. And I believe she got saved reading a book. Crossing the Switchblade. Yeah. Look, that's awesome. That's a great book. I hope everybody listening get that book.
Yes.
She read it, and she ended up getting saved. And I remember her transformation, and I was angry about it.
Really?
The transformation.
Why is that?
Because I felt like, so you mean to tell me,
right,
you done dragged me through all this stuff, and now you free? Now I gotta get myself together. I wasn't so happy in the beginning, but she was the first example that there was something greater than us. Because I didn't grow up in God. I didn't grow up in church. I didn't grow up knowing about faith. So when I saw that, I said, okay, this is not the woman that I knew.
So she made like an immediate.
I mean, she was delivered. Wow. To the point, the secular music stopped. I wasn't allowed to hang out in the house like I was before.
Really?
She was on my case about the way I was living. She was loving me, but she was putting up boundaries and standards that I never heard. So that was the first sign, like, okay, well, I know it's something. I ended up going off, and I met my husband, and
who's right here with us today.
He's here. He is here. I met him along the way, and we had our son. And through that experience, I didn't know I was suffering from postpartum depression, which is also something that I could identify now with other people with kids. And I was very low and very depressed, and I started to decline. I was very unhappy with my situation because I was a mother now. And that drove me to a very dark place, and I became suicidal. And in the initial part was just like, okay, you don't want to go outside. You don't want to talk.
Right.
You don't want to be happy. You don't want light. And throughout the time, people kept telling me all their problems, and I was helping people, but I needed someone to hear that I was hurting. There was times people would call me for advice, and I would have tears running down my eyes because I was so depressed.
Wow.
And when I reached the low state of suicide, I started to hear voices. Thoughts began to really weigh on me. And I reached out to my mom, and I said, listen, I'm having some really not so good thoughts. I even shared it with my husband. And I think my turning point was when my husband, who I had really depended on to love me and support me, had said to me, I don't know what to do. Like, I can't help you out of that place. And I ended up stumbling into a mental health clinic.
Really?
And initially they had suggested that I send, this is so God, the physician suggested that I actually sign myself into a psych ward.
Okay.
Now, I just went in there because I need some help.
Right.
Go to psych ward. They gave me a paper, and I remember standing in this health station on Fulton Street in Brooklyn. I had the paper in my hand, and a door opened up. It was some nurses. They were all African American women. And she said, can I help you? I had a very confused look, and I had the paper in my hand. I said, I don't understand why they're telling me to go to a psych ward. I just need some help. And before I could say help, they pulled me into the office and closed the door and started praying over me.
Really?
Wow.
And telling me about Jesus Christ at that time. It was my first call. So from there, I ended up, let me go to church. Let me find a church. I don't mean to take up so much time. It's such a long
testimony.
But they originally had prophesied to me, spoke from God that I would run into someone, and I did, that had a church. I was going there. I was happy. I went back a day later, and there was a chain on the church door. They had lost it. I didn't know anything about it. It was a small little church front. Now I'm broken. What am I going to do? And then my son started having seizures. Right. That's a whole nother story. Right. My girlfriend, and I hope she is going to hear this, her name is Corinne, and we were in school together, and her mother is a pastor.
Okay.
And she kept inviting me to church in Staten Island, and I kept telling her no. And when I reached my rock bottom place, I reached out to her mom, and her mom just said, wherever you are, drop your things and come to where I am.
Wow.
And I came to her house. This woman opened up her house to me, and I was having a mental breakdown at the time, hearing voices, seeing things, just really in a bad place mentally. And she introduced Jesus Christ to me that night. And, you know, she explained to me that there were forces that were really trying to take my life. And when she began to share with me the gospel of Jesus Christ, you know, that I was put on this earth for a purpose, that I was separated from God because I was in sin, and that I needed to, you know, accept Christ as my Lord and Savior, to have that, you know, restoration, like just explaining the gospel. I gave my life to Christ on the bedroom floor in this woman's house on a Saturday.
All right.
And she invited me to her church. That was 16 years ago. I've never left.
Wow.
So I had a true encounter with Christ in that woman's house. I told the Lord, I said, listen, if you are real, if you can help me with my son with these seizures, help me and I wasn't married at the time, you know, Derek, my husband. If you can help me, I promise I'll serve you. I will not turn away. I won't. And I haven't. And from there, that's where I am. It's that I had a true encounter with Jesus Christ. Right. So all of these channels that I've gone through, all of these valleys, these experiences, I know for sure brought me to where I am. I get emotional at times in church, just looking at my son, my husband, my mom, knowing that God is real. My mother and I witnessed, we walked the floors of shelters together, sharing the gospel, and talking about how God reconciled our relationship. You know, my husband and I, we also are in ministry together. My son's in ministry together. So, you know, that is the end result where I am right now. You know, I'm sold out for Jesus Christ. I love him. I know him. And I'm going to share who he is and what he's done for us for as long as I have breath in my body.
Yeah. It's an amazing story.
So now, obviously we have people who are going to be listening who are like,
of course.
Well, Jesus.
I know.
So you know, people say, oh, well, you know, whether it's you need to see a psychiatrist or you need counseling or...
Was it counseling?
Yeah, so for you, this was like because I just want to be clear with people, like, was this like a instant thing, your whole life turned around, or it was a gradual process?
It was instant for some things and gradual for others. So instant was just me understanding that I had purpose here, the connection now, you know, the wholeness coming, like... feeling like my purpose, like just the light, just seeing things differently was instantly. The gradual part is counseling. I do receive counseling. My pastor does mental health counseling as well, pastoral counseling rather.
Right.
So through the years, I see counseling for her. There was a time before I accepted Christ where I did go to mental health counselors. And I did find some places of success and clarity. When I was trying to figure out my depression state and, you know, the postpartum. I never knew what that was, you know, so that was good for me. I am 100% on board for mental health counseling. I do believe that there should be an equal balance in both. That Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior and my basis of faith. And I believe that he allows mental health counseling for me to keep steady. You know, we also, you know, have to do, maintenance counseling for marriage.
Right.
Yeah. We continue to talk out our issues, and Jesus doesn't want you to only operate in one facet, so I definitely am a product of counseling, for sure. Yeah.
I just had a question, just to piggyback a little bit on something you said earlier. You said that a lot of times parents have a story that they cannot always get across. So I'm assuming you've heard your mom's story.
Yes.
Okay. Has that helped earlier on? Not now. I know you guys have come to a place of reconciliation, but has hearing her story facilitated the forgiveness process for you?
100%. Like I said, my mom accepted Christ first. So through her process of, counseling, she was in outpatient now. She's actually, she went through those stages of that. But she also was going through her stages of learning what forgiveness is and how to communicate with me. And one of those things was, okay, you need to go to your daughter and allow her to be free. So I remember our conversation verbatim in Brooklyn. My mother said to me, I know I hurt you. I know I did these things. I know we went through these experiences and, whatever that was. And I remember that I had always conditioned myself not to express myself to her because I didn't want to seem like I was disrespecting her. Okay. But my mom said to me, it is okay if you hate me. Wow. And I think when she said that, that is what freed me, because she was willing to take accountability and accept. I needed that at that moment. I mean, some people, we say, people should forgive whether that's given or not. But I needed that conversation. I needed her to be okay with me being angry and to give me a chance to work through that. Because sometimes, parents want kids to forgive and get over it really quick.
Right, exactly.
You got to let them feel that, because, they're hurt. And you can't dictate when someone, I'm not going to say be in prison, to someone if you've asked for forgiveness and you've worked towards changes and they're still stuck in that. It's not much you can do. But you should be patient. I think my mom was able to, say, okay, let it out. And I was able to say, I hate you because of this. And I hate you because at that moment. And I was about 19. I remember that.
And so she allowed you to work through that process.
She allowed me to feel that. And I know that was huge for her because it's hard for you to hear your children say you messed up. I've had my son say some things to me like, listen, Ma, and it hurts, and to just take the time and kind of take off the guard of I'm your parent, I'm always right, and to let them feel what they're feeling, and I'm not saying let a child curse you out or disrespect you, but she gave me that opportunity, and I'm very, very grateful. A lot of people ask us how were we able to get past it. There's a lot of people, grown adults now, that are still angry with their parents.
And it's a big deal. It's a big deal because, like you said, sometimes you don't even get an I'm sorry. No. For saying things, to you when you were a child or whatever the case might have been. So for your mom to even allow that is a big deal, and that's amazing.
It is. It is. I'm very, very, and again, I'm fortunate, I'm blessed because that's a part of my story that makes it easier for me. My pastor, Pearlie Horton, Raymond House of Prayer and Deliverance, Staten Island, New York. My Bishop, Apostle J. Horton.
I had to give the shout out.
I had to give a shout out. No, International Church of Deliverance. They also have played such a huge role, honestly. My pastor helping to the pastoral counseling piece, because I'm a minister, right? So in order for me to minister, I have to be ministered to as well. That's also something that I try to strive for. Like, doing the self-care, taking the time to sort through things. And I remember her telling me it's going to take some time, you know, for you to heal and you guys to work through things. And her even telling me, listen, be patient with your mom in this area. You know, she's having this experience because of this. And that is seeking help. And being able to say, okay, I need to talk to someone, even as a minister. We still need to talk.
And you know what? I'm so glad you said that, because that's something that I think in the church we don't really acknowledge. Is that there are a lot of ministers out there just ministering in dysfunction.
Very true.
And they haven't dealt with, you know, their hurts, their pains. And so in essence, what they're doing is they're hurting others.
True.
Because they haven't dealt with all of that. So it's, you know, that's so important what you said. Just you as a minister, you also need to be ministered to. You also need to get your healing. You also need to go through the forgiveness process of whatever is going on. Because, you know, believers don't always believe that that's necessary.
This is true. This has been like, I'm not going to say it's a debate, so to speak, but there are a lot of different opinions about it. And maybe because my pastor too is a mental health counselor, she also understands the importance of that. And, you know, even through the sermons, when, you know, we talk from the biblical point, there's so much of it that talks about working through your issues. You know, so many things we could refer to for that. But it's what I found out, it's a difficult process. It is a time-consuming process. And it is also a journey that is very, very painful. It hurts. And it doesn't stop. It's like, okay, you think these layers, you can really feel like you have it, but then something else will spring up, you know, and trigger it. It's just like a forever journey. We're forever on the potter's wheel trying to figure it out. But you do have to take the time to work through that and have communication. Nobody's perfect. No one is perfect. None of us. We all have it, but I would utilize whatever help I can get. You know, I mean, I need help. You know, there's times where my pastor will have an altar call and she'll say, some of you ministers might need to come up here for that right now and, you know, get what we need to get, because we definitely all on a journey of that. So I agree. I definitely see that a lot. There's a lot of mixed feelings about mental health counseling. A lot.
It is.
And some try to do away with Jesus completely. So that's off too. There has to be an equal balance.
There has
between
to be balance.
Definitely.
So one last question for me, Joy. Just because I mean I work with a lot of young people. What would you say to a young person who might be not necessarily going through the same situation you were, but just dealing with a lot in their life? You know, just having a lot of, whether it's anger or pain. Like, what would you say to that young person?
Well, it's all right. So it's two things, okay? The initial side of me will always want them to know about Jesus. Always. Because that is a complete, you know, that's the wholeness. That's that gap that's missing, that everlasting love, you know, that would be in my heart. Am I always able to share that? No. Due to different reasons, right? In general, if there's a young person, I would always encourage them to not feel like they're all alone. Making sure that they understand that it is important for them to connect with someone who can hear what it is that they're going through in a safe space. For me, the most dangerous thing is a young person carrying secrets and don't have anyone at all. I mean, that is really dangerous for me. I'm a person with my own son. I don't care who help him, long as he get help. You know, he knows that it takes a village. And I had to learn that with my own child. Like, okay, there's some things he may not want to tell me. And I have to be confident and secure enough that he could tell maybe Danya, you know, as a person. So for young people, I would always say, trying to find someone in their school that they could talk to, a counselor. You know, if they attend a church, you know, someone as close to a responsible adult, even if it's a responsible friend.
Okay.
Someone that is responsible enough. I would always encourage them not to be alone with those issues. I don't care if you got to call the 800 number anonymously to talk to someone. They need to talk and be able to share what they are feeling with someone that is going to keep them on track.
Okay. All right.
So that's, for me, it would be, don't you carry those things by yourself.
Okay.
You find someone somewhere, a trustworthy adult or friend that you can talk to help you, while you can. Ultimately, of course, it's a relationship with Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Okay.
But a lot of times that's not always possible at that time.
Okay.
So that's what I would, that would just be for me.
Okay.
That's great advice. Yeah. Because sometimes they feel like they have to, just keep everything bottled up inside, and they can't tell mom, they can't tell dad, and I tell my kids to talk to one of the youth ministers at church if you feel like
definitely.
you need to.
Definitely.
So that's very.
Or they'll medicate.
Yeah.
See that's it. And electronics, they'll medicate themselves.
Medicate.
Oh, the electronics is an escape too.
Yeah.
The electronics is an escape.
Yeah.
It's an escape, and they're hard. They have escapism. They'll be on the social media all day long.
Right.
They'll be wherever. Anything to escape whatever is bothering them. Whether that's out with their friends, that's doing other things. Sometimes it's sleeping all day long.
True.
Whatever it is that I don't have to face, whatever it is that's bothering me. And those are things like, I thank God I don't regret anything that I have been through.
Right.
Just to be able to share what I've come out of this with.
Yeah.
I don't care,
and to help others. It's definitely a story that can help a lot of others.
Definitely. That's what we do.
Yeah.
See, I got my fatigue on.
That's right. Going to war.
My fatigue on.
It's amazing.
Well, Joy, listen, we want to thank you so much for not only coming by but being so transparent.
Yes,
being so real.
Yes, sir.
And just really offering like hope to people, and just letting people know that even if you're going through a tough time, that there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes, indeed.
So we just want to thank you.
Thank you so much.
I miss you guys. I cannot tell you how I know this man in a professional way. Yeah. We can't say that on air. We'll wait until it's over. But I'm so proud. No, seriously, I'm really, really, really proud of what you guys are doing. I think this is great.
We're proud of what you're doing.
Yeah,
that's right.
Give me the kind counseling so I can pass it out. Some cards when I leave here. I'll slip it in the track.
Yeah. They still give out tracks?
Yes, we do. Hush your mouth. Yes, we do give out tracks.
Where do you get them?
ChristianBookstore.com.
Oh.
www. We do give out tracks. We do.
Okay. All
right.
All right, Joy. So we thank you again.
Yay.
Thank you so much for
Thank you
stopping by. It was a
me.
pleasure having you here with us today.
Yes. All right.